Well, good afternoon, everyone. Meteorologist Michael Wilhite here with Southern Indiana Weather. I want to bring you the latest forecast update. By now, if you've paid attention to Facebook, Twitter, on my social media accounts here, you've probably heard me talk about some heavy rain threats this weekend, so I want to mention that tonight and a little bit more into the longer range beyond that as well, about the pattern we're going to be going into. But before we get there, we do have some spotty showers and thunderstorms around. They're becoming, I forecasted some isolated, a 20 to 30% chance today. Southwest Indiana is staying pretty dry, but you do have some showers and thunderstorms here over in the eastern side of southern Indiana. Really not a whole lot of these going on. These are going to be dying off as we head towards sunset. Just going to be sort of a hot day. Now, spotty showers and thunderstorms, 30 to 40% chance for tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. And nothing major, just sort of the heat of the day to trigger these off. There's no front around the area. There's a front well down to our south, but that's not going to affect us. This is just sort of heat of the day. Thunderstorms is basically what you've got going on. Right now, that'll change as we head to the weekend, though. Let's look at the surface maps. This will help you, I think, understand what's going on. Here's in the morning on Friday. There's a fast-moving cold front here. By the time you get into Saturday morning, notice how fast this thing has moved. And then by the time you get into Sunday morning, it's starting to put the brakes on things here. And it's sort of stalled out right here, cutting Indiana in half here, and then it's still stalled out in the area here by the time you get into Monday and Tuesday as well. It's just kind of persistent around here. Now, at the same time, what you've got going on, if I go back to where I was here, you notice that you've got this little dashed line right here. Well, that is basically just an open wave of low pressure right here. Sometimes it's a little closed low, sometimes it's more of an open wave, and basically what you're going to have is this cold front coming down south. This low is essentially going to start to retrograde up here because you have high pressure over here. High pressure winds run in a clockwise direction. It's going to sort of push this low to retrograde back over here. It gets sucked up into the cold front and then sort of rides up that cold front, and that's going to spell trouble for wherever this cold front ends up stalling out. You can see that well in the Euro model. I think it's handling it pretty well. There's that open wave here down to the south. Sometimes a closed low, but mostly just more of an open wave. There's your cold front approaching up into here, and then watch what happens. It just, as you head into Saturday here, what happens is it is literally just sucking up the energy from this right along the cold front, and then it's forming a new low off of that. It's got all that tropical moisture coming into it, and then boom, you've got very, very heavy rain coming in somewhere along that cold front. It's going to depend where does that frontal boundary stall out as to where we get the heavy rain. And as you could guess at this point, the models are completely different in their viewpoints on that. Euro model here is a little bit more northwest than what the GFS and GEM models are. But nonetheless, somebody looks to get some pretty heavy rain out of this. It's going to be some pretty deep tropical moisture as well. You can see it here on the PWAT, the precipitable water. This is a measure of moisture in the atmosphere. There's that open wave, that disturbance down to our south with the tropical moisture. Here's the cold front coming in, and watch how they just sort of merge, and it sort of sucks that energy up and then moves that tropical moisture stream right over us. And so sometimes you have a cold front pass and it ends up being more of a dry kind of cold front. This will not be that. This will not be a dry cold front at all. This is going to have plenty of moisture to work with. Very deep, rich tropical moisture from the Gulf of Mexico coming up, and that's going to spell a very heavy rain threat. And by the way, historically, whenever we have had a deep low pressure from the south bring up tropical moisture and it hooks onto a cold front, we get flash flood watches and very heavy rain with that. That's happened numerous times here in the past. And by the way, sometimes you're going to see the models not handle this right either. I know this is not a hurricane, but you remember a hurricane a few years ago that came on shore, and it was predicted to move up here and bring us very, very, very heavy rains. And it was predicted, really for southern Indiana and all this. Guess what happened to it? It went west of us, and places in Missouri and Illinois up into northern Indiana got the very heavy rains with that one. The models did not handle it well at all. That's a very distinct possibility that could happen again, so it's something that we've got to watch out for here. The Euro right now is the one that's taking it more towards the northwest than the others, which kind of raises my eyebrow to say, could the GFS and the Canadian models be missing the boat here? Could the Euro be right on this? A little too early to tell right now, but it's got my eye, it's got my attention as someone is going to get some very heavy rain. We got to fine tune those details. Don't get me wrong, it's going to be wet either way here over the weekend. That's a guarantee. It's going to be wet. It's a question of how wet it's going to be at this point. Here's what the Euro model is showing as far as rain totals, and oh boy, there's the heavy swath of rain. When you're getting into the blues, you're talking 7 inches or more of rain accumulated this weekend. Basically, it's hard to see on these shades. I know it's not a great map, but it's what I've got available here to show you folks, and basically anywhere from 3 inches to 4 inches is what it gives us across southern Indiana, with 5, 6, 7, even 8 and 9 inches across a swath here from Missouri all the way up to, say, Indianapolis, and then starting to go back into Ohio as well. That's deep tropical moisture, and well, you can just see it right here, the path that it takes. Showed you the Euro model earlier. There was that open wave sort of down here, and then you had the cold front that was approaching up here. There's where the cold front sort of drapes, sets up shop. It gets sort of sucked in, and then the low pressure just sort of rides along that boundary right there. And when it does, that's where you get that deep, rich tropical moisture going on to, and the very, very heavy rain with it. So the question for us is going to be deciding where that's going to set up shop. Where that cold front ends up setting shop is going to be key to determining this whole forecast. So very complicated setup for us this weekend. So here's what the Euro model says, and you notice that it's got some very heavy rain, but if I just go and show you the GFS model, notice, well, where's the heavy rain here is not there. It's a lot lighter totals for one, and the swath is more over Kentucky and into Ohio, and we still get some decent totals here. GFS delivers about 3 inches of rain here in Evansville, 1.6 up in Bloomington, 1.5 inches there in Indy, but you go into central Illinois and you don't even have an inch in many places over this. So it's much, much different than what the Euro is right now. But interestingly, if you look at the GFS ensembles, the ensemble data, an ensemble is basically you take the initial GFS and you tweak the initial conditions just a little bit to account for the fact that we never have the atmosphere perfectly modeled, and you run that multiple times. In the case of the GFS, you run it 21 different times, a 21 member ensemble model here, and basically what you get here, 20 ensemble members, and then a control model as well, which is basically a lower resolution GFS if you really wanted to know that. But when you run that multiple times and then you put a mean together, and that kind of gives you a better picture in the longer term. And what you can see as you look at the individual members is, just notice there's one, this one, there's several one of them here that have the heavier rain more out in line with where the Euro is. There are some that are more like the operational GFS, like ensemble member 18 here, but then you have others here like ensemble member 2 and ensemble member 3 and 9, and let's go with here with 10 and 11 and 12 and 14, and those are pretty eerily similar to what we see in the Euro model. So there is some data that is suggesting the Euro model may be trending the right way there. The GEM has not caught on to that yet, though. The GEM pretty clueless on that northwestward track, and it's got everything here more out of the area. Maybe 1 to 3 inches across the area here doesn't deliver us nearly as much as what the other ones do. So I show you this, folks, to say that there is a wide discrepancy in the model data right now. This is not something we're going to be able to nail down just right now. It's going to take a little while, but I think as we get closer to Friday, we'll start to be able to dial in this. But I think somebody is going to get some very heavy rain out of this, and on the order of flash flood warning kind of rains. All right, I still think a solid 2 to 3 inches of rain is very likely for most of us in southern Indiana this weekend. With the data that's rolling in at this point, it may be more, and that's of course scary. If we get 7, 8 inches of rain area wide in large portions of the rain, that could be catastrophic to crops. That's what we don't want by any means. It could lead to major flooding problems in fields and in city streets and in homes as well. So we don't want that. I'd much rather have the only 2 or 3 inches of rain, but I will say this, either way, it looks like we're going to get very wet this weekend. So we'll just have to stay tuned for more details about that. I'll keep you updated as the week goes on. Looking into the period, though, beyond that, just really quickly, here's what's going on in the 500 millibar level, the mid-level jet stream. There's that southeast ridge. That's sort of pumping up the moisture here, and we've got that deep, rich moisture coming up to deliver the rain. But what's going to happen beyond this is eventually that's going to go away and sort of off to the east, and we are going to return to that classic northwest flow as we head into later in the month. And as we head into later in the month, that northwest flow is just very persistent, as you notice, and that's going to deliver much cooler weather. Part of the reason why we're going to see that, though, by the way, is because the Pacific Ocean is absolutely cooking. You might remember the typhoon rule that I've talked about in several videos and blog posts in the past. Typhoon rule basically says when you have a typhoon that recurves past Japan and heads toward the Gulf of Alaska. Folks, 6 to 10 days later, you've got a trough over the eastern United States, and we've got not one but three. Here is Omise, which is a typhoon, and notice Japan's right over here. Here it's recurving past Korea, and then right on its heels, here you go. Here's Kansen, there's Japan, and it's recurving past that, moving past Korea there, and then you've got an Invest here. Not a named storm yet, but it's on its way to becoming a named storm, and you guessed it, it's recurving past Japan up as well. That's three different unique storms that are going to be recurving past there. That's going to spell to me that this idea of a consistent northwest flow in the modeling is spot on, and we're going to have that. That's going to provide that classic northwest flow, classic trough over us. That's going to keep us in a cooler period, also going to keep us in a very wet and active period. So if you're looking, yes, we've got some 90-degree weather this week, but if you're looking for any ridiculous heat, it ain't going to come. You're not going to see any hundreds this month, I don't think. It's just going to happen at all. I don't think you're going to see upper 90s this month. In fact, you're going to see the 80s go away in pretty short order once the northwest flow kicks in after this weekend. The ensemble members are showing that well. We got a few days with flirting near 90, but then by and large, as you head through here, low to mid 80s are going to dominate the rest of the month. Doesn't seem like August weather, but the reason it's going to dominate, of course, is you got the flow out of the northwest, which is bringing the air mass from Canada down to us, which is a cooler air mass, and also it brings the rain chances with it. And of course, rain keeps things cooler. So a very active and cooler period setting up as we head down into the period. No relief really in sight for this. Looks like a very, very, very wet August coming our way, in my opinion, from the way things are shaping up right now. I know there were some concerns that with the developing La Nina, we could eventually go into a little bit of a drought, but La Nina has not developed yet. It's attempting to develop. It is not there yet, though, and there is no sign of it becoming a strong enough one to produce that drought yet. Well, that's a good thing. We don't want a drought, but it would be nice to break this pattern just a little bit. Unfortunately, I don't see any relief in sight to this pattern anytime soon. Looks like it's going to stick around at least through the rest of August, the way things are looking right now. If you're interested, you can go to southernindianaweather.com, click on 10-day forecast, folks, and you can get the numbers. There's the daily rain chances with it and the cooler weather that is approaching there as well. That is it for this update, folks. I'm meteorologist Michael Wilhite for southernindianaweather.com. Have a great night, folks, and we'll see you next time. Stay tuned for more updates on the heavy rain threat coming this weekend.